Chapter 36. Work then play. I slipped on a blue and gold LA Rams shirt and a pair of shorts with an elastic waistband that were clearly baggy, but not falling around my ankles. As I tied the t-shirt in a knot on the side so it didn't completely engulf me and folded down the waistband of the shorts, I thought about how I could make Luke feel more at ease. Clearly, something rattled him, and although I didn't know what it was, I felt confident Luke couldn't scare me away. When I returned, Luke sat on the couch waiting for me. Not quite up to Lyle's standards, but it will have to do, I said, indicating my outfit. Luke threw me a strained smile. I sat down next to him and took his hand. It's okay. I'm not going anywhere. He looked at the far corner of the room, not meeting my eyes. This is a little hard to talk about. I nodded. You know how I told you my sister drowned? Well, there's more to the story. I sat back and listened carefully, trying not to make a sound so Luke would continue. When I was little, my family lived in a house, not as big as this but nice, with a pool out back. I nodded, following the story. And there was a fence with a gate that protected the pool. Luke paused, and I looked at him to let him know I was still listening. My sister and I were playing in the yard with a beach ball one day, and the ball went over the gate that led to the pool. I couldn't reach the latch, but being a precocious kid, I got a stool to stand on and opened the gate to retrieve the ball. He stopped. He looked like he was trying to quell tears before he continued. I never closed the gate. He shook his head. Later, when I was inside playing with my action figures, totally absorbed in my own world, my mom came in frantically looking for my little sister. She had wandered outside, and seeing the gate open, he started to choke up a little. She drowned. I hugged Luke, wrapping my arms around him as best I could and rubbing his back. It's not your fault, you know, I said. What's not? About the gate. Kids do stupid things all the time. Luke looked away, still shaking his head in frustration. Still, I haven't forgotten, he said. My mom never knew. She just thought the gate blew open or something. I kissed Luke on the cheek and brought his head against my chest, running my hands in the back of his hair. We moved pretty soon after that to a house without a pool, and I was always afraid to go in the water after that, refusing to swim, he said. Oh, Luke, I'm sorry. I thought that if I just didn't face it, if I never had fun in the water, then my guilt would go away. That's why it's so hard for you, and last night in the pool. Luke nodded. There were just so many emotions, first scared there was something wrong, then relieved. Then when everyone jumped in the pool, it was such a good time. I think what you're doing with this movie, dedicating it to your sister and donating money for kids to learn how to swim, is such a great way to honor Cassidy. He looked at me. I have to thank you, Stella. Not everyone would have stuck by me. I haven't been the greatest student. Nonsense. I flicked my hand his way. I've loved training you. I looked deep into Luke's eyes. We all have hang-ups. You've helped me with mine. I'm committed to helping you with yours. He hugged me and pecked me on the lips. Just one question, I said. Why did you get a house with a pool anyway? Have you ever found a house in LA this big without a pool? We both laughed in agreement. Luke and I hung out for most of the day before I returned home to find Michelle, steeped in her studies. When's the test? I asked her. Next week, she said. I'm not ready. I let out a big sigh. Of course you are. I've never known anyone more ready to take the LSATs. You haven't known anyone who's taken the LSATs. Okay, you have a point, I said, opening the fridge and looking inside but finding nothing. But I'm sure you'll do fine. What if this doesn't work out? What am I going to do then? I can't go back to just working in that office. Michelle let out a big sigh and pressed her head against the couch cushion in frustration. You always have your singing career, I said with a smirk, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl on the counter. How wild was that? She said, sitting up. I can't believe that producer gave me his number. I'm sure it's nothing. He was probably drunk and totally forgot about it. Take the LSATs first so you maintain your focus, then call that record producer. You never know. I took a bit of the apple. How's it going with you and Luke anyway? I see your new Walk of Shame outfit. She indicated my Rams t-shirt and shorts. I smirked. You know, I got pushed in a pool. Of course I needed new clothes. Ooh-hoo, she said, not buying it. You've been there all day. Yeah, we had some more training to do, I said between apple bites. Well, he sure looked into you when he kissed you in the pool. I nodded, thinking about how to respond to her accusation. He was just relieved I was all right. Anyway, yeah, we spent the night together. Ooh, details, said Michelle. I filled her in on my sexcapades, leaving out the more intimate details. Michelle, interested in my every word. Listened for once without interrupting. I also left out my more sobering talk with Luke. I knew he wanted to keep his secret regarding his sister private. Even though I trusted Michelle with my life, it wasn't my story to tell. So after all that, what's your status with Luke? She asked me. Don't push it, I said. Why do we need to label it? Michelle gave me a look like I was crazy. Did you see all those hot actresses there last night? Gina was just one fish in a sea of many. You want him hopping around like a bear in stream, catching all the fish he can. A bear? Really? I gave her the exact same crazy look she gave me. Luke's not like that. I don't know what exactly our relationship is, but I'm not worried. Michelle raised her eyebrows up at me. That's a first. There's a first time for everything. The goal's the same. Get Luke swimming. The rest should fall into place. I picked up the remote and pointed it at the TV. I hoped I was right and Luke actually wanted a serious relationship with me. But until we reached his goal, I thought it would be too premature to ask him. He obviously needed to focus on swimming with the movie coming up. Work then play, I said to Michelle, remembering Luke kissing my thighs and thinking of his hunky body on top of mine. I wasn't totally sure I could follow my own advice. Chapter 37 Sink or Swim. Despite the fact that Luke and I worked all week on his swimming and then I came home to quiz and prep Michelle for the LSATs, I managed to maintain my energy. Both Luke and Michelle were nervous about the challenges that lie ahead for each of them. Helping them gave me a sense of satisfaction and left me too busy to even fret about my relationship status with Luke. Besides some flirting and a few stolen kisses, we kept it pretty professional. Plus, my excuse of needing to help Michelle study provided me a reason for not staying the night or planning any dates with Luke. While I would have loved to cozy up to Luke in his big bed, he didn't need any more distractions. At least not until the movie started filming. And Michelle needed me to. I'd been spending so much time with Luke that I neglected to help Michelle, and I owed her my attention too. After all, she helped me hook up with Luke in the first place. Luke, worried about the start of filming, which the director determined would begin with the water scenes, he insisted I accompany him to the set. I had never been to a legit, working Hollywood set before. My plan was to sit in the corner, be quiet, and hope no one noticed me while I provided moral support for Luke. Luke and I sat in his vibrant red Ferrari as he pulled up to a gate behind a couple of tall buildings on the studio's lot. A guy in a booth waved at Luke, and the gate opened. As we drove to the back, I saw a makeshift city street complete with storefronts and streetlights. Along another corner, a road with houses surrounded by white picket fences created a residential backdrop. The scenery looked clean and orderly, creating a perfect little bubble of suburbia. After Luke parked, a production assistant, PA for short, showed Luke to his trailer. The PA, Claire, looked about 15, but informed us she was 19 and working on her first feature film. She made sure to tell Luke she could get him anything he wanted twice. I flopped down on the small seating area as Luke paced up and down the trailer. Is this what you're like all the time? I asked. He even started biting his nails. No. It's this damn water scene. What if I can't do it? What if I start to drown or look like a dead fish or something? I stood up and hugged him. Don't worry. I'll be right there to save you. You'll be fine. They just need a few shots, right? He nodded. The movie was about a fisherman who saves another fishing vessel in a storm. As part of Luke's heroic scene, he rescues a woman who has fallen overboard, and they develop a romantic relationship. Luke's co-star for the film, Alicia Stiles, is an actress well known for her professionalism and grace. She often played regal roles and even studied with the Royal Shakespeare Company. Because she was married and a serious actress, I didn't consider her a threat to my relationship with Luke. I was glad Luke would be getting the chance to work with such a seasoned actress as opposed to some fame-hungry up-and-comer. After wardrobe came in and decided on Luke's clothes for the scene, a makeup artist worked on Luke's face and hair. I thought it pretty odd since he'd be getting wet anyway. But the makeup artist insisted she darken Luke's eyebrows and heighten his features to look stronger. About an hour later, Claire came to escort us to the set for filming. Days ago, Luke had already met the cast and crew for an introduction and a table read. But this would be the first time they were all getting into character for some real action. And the first time they would all be working in the water tank. All in all, once we reached the set, it looked fairly funny actually. The crew planned to film outside footage of the boat in a different location. So the scene that day was all about Luke diving in the water and rescuing his co-star. The set consisted of a tank that looked like a huge above-ground pool with lights and cameras scattered around on a large deck attached to poles both above the tank and to the side. The water was dyed a murky green to mimic the water of the lake where they planned to shoot the boat scenes. I stood on the corner of the deck, watching the setup. After some small talk and additional introductions, the director, a middle-aged balding man with glasses whom I'd never seen before, suggested Luke and Alicia get in the pool. Alicia appeared more stunning than I remembered on screen. A bit taller, her skin creamy, the top of her breasts peeking out of her shirt. She looked slim and delicate, like a china doll about to be thrown to a bunch of sharks as she eyed the tank with suspicion. The set director had installed a platform under the water on one side of the tank so Luke and Alicia could stand above the water in one spot. Otherwise, the water appeared about 10 feet deep. 2 divers also entered the tank with waterproof cameras, set to shoot underwater footage. Luke swam around for a bit, while Alicia, in her graceful nature, floated on her back along the top. The director reminded them of what they needed to do. Then someone stood in front of the camera with a slate outlining the scene and take number and snapped it shut. Action, the director called. Luke dove under the water and swam toward Alicia, but she wasn't ready. Take 2. Again, Luke dove down and swam around to Alicia. That time Alicia surfaced too soon. Take 3. Luke started, and before he could get very far, Alicia called, cut. She lost a contact. Once that was fixed, they tried again and again and again. Every time Luke started fine, gliding under the water, but something always became a problem once he met up with Alicia. By the 20th take a few hours later, Luke looked both exhausted and annoyed. He'd been so worried about his own performance in the water, he hadn't considered his co-star wouldn't be up to snuff. At one point Luke groaned, "Come on, Alicia. My whole body's shriveling." Besides looking ruffled and frustrated too, Alicia started shivering. Luke exited the tank and walked over to the director, quietly talking to him while Claire, the PA, draped a warm robe around Luke's shoulders. Huddled in conversation, Luke and the director looked like a coach and the star quarterback cooking up the next play in a big game. After a minute or two, Luke nodded and strode over to me. "Stella, you need to show Alicia what to do," he said. Huh. That was obviously not what I was expecting. I thought I was there to help Luke, and knowing he no longer really needed my help in the water, I just figured I'd blend in with the background. Clearly Luke had devised another scheme. "I can't," I said. "Sure you can." Luke pasted on a big smile, once again drawing me in with his movie star good looks. "Claire will take you to wardrobe for something to wear in the tank. You give Alicia some tips, show her what to do, and we'll be good to go." He gave me a double thumbs up, trying to convince me of his plan. I shook my head in fear. Being in the limelight was Luke's thing, not mine. I didn't want so many people staring at me, especially when I wasn't prepared.
Luke, no.
"I can't." Luke took a deep breath and grabbed my hand. It would mean a lot to me. His eyes drooped a bit, making his face look sad and genuine. I knew how important this role was to him. He wanted to make the movie work. "Okay," I said. "But you owe me." Luke's face brightened, a big smile radiating across his lips. "You know it," he said. I couldn't bring myself to replicate his optimism. For some reason I had a sinking feeling something was about to go wrong. Chapter 38, Bathing Beauty. I couldn't believe what I was actually going to do. Get in a pool with at least 10 cameras pointed at me and try to get a graceful beauty to swim. I thought Luke must be out of his mind. The director determined I didn't need a specific wardrobe for the scene, since I'd just be instructing and then I'd get out of the shot. Claire found a swimsuit and wardrobe and led me back to Luke's trailer to change. With my shirt and jeans thrown on top, I followed Claire back to the set. Standing next to Alicia on the deck, it was evident how much more muscular I was, her slender body tucked under her robe. I quickly tore off my clothes and slid in the tank in the swimsuit provided. It was a basic black, particularly unflattering bathing suit, but it would have to do. Luke disrobed and entered the tank as well. He told me what he and the director wanted Alicia to do, and we practiced the scene while the crew set up. After a few more minutes, Alicia entered the water. While it was clear she could swim, her grace on land did not extend to the water. Each time she paddled, big splashes obstructed her face, occasionally getting in her mouth, making her cough. Apparently, she could float seamlessly on her back, but upright or on her front side, she looked like a drowning puppy. I demonstrated how to make hand strokes under the water in order to keep her head afloat. Alicia couldn't replicate it. Next, I worked on encouraging her to float on her back and then flip over to her front and continue to float. It seemed to work until she needed a breath and flailed her arms and head in a wild motion. I knew I could probably train her. We just needed more time and to start with more basic elements. But the clock was running as the director started letting out groans and grousing that we were losing the good light. I hopped out of the pool and wrapped a towel around myself. The robes were reserved for the real stars, and I sat curled up in a ball by the side. Again, someone stood with the slate, and the scene started all over again. Luke swam over and Alicia hesitated before performing somewhat better, trying to float instead of flail. They tried a few more times, each take the director's voice becoming more clipped and irritated. Finally, he threw up his hands and slammed down his headphones. I could see the panic on Luke's face, wanting to save the project. He hopped out of the pool and again approached the director. I heard them talking animatedly, Luke arguing his case, the director disagreeing. And while I could only hear bits and pieces, there was one thing I heard clearly for sure come out of the director's mouth. She's too large. She's like a whale compared to Alicia. Just then I knew they'd been talking about me. A couple of other people heard it and looked my way. Whispers from the crew ignited more stares. I couldn't hide it, it was kind of true. My curves and muscles were much bigger compared to Alicia's lithe frame. I knew it, and now the whole set of cast and crew for the movie knew it too. As Luke continued to argue with the director, I wanted nothing more than to dig a hole and crawl into it. I never asked to be in a movie. I never wanted to expose my body to so many people, much less think that millions of moviegoers should be forced to watch my thick frame on screen. Give me a nice pair of heels and a proper outfit, and I could kick anyone's butt. In a bathing suit, I felt more like a wilted flower. I started to feel even more self-conscious with everyone waiting for the next direction. How could Luke do this to me? I felt so out of place, literally like a fish out of water. Well, apparently not a fish but a whale. When Luke finally came over to me, having settled things with the director, my unease and disappointment fueled my anger. How could you do this to me? I asked Luke, standing up, making sure to cover as much of my body with the towel as I could. Everyone is looking at me. That whale comment is exactly the thing I've been trying to avoid. Luke looked at me and grabbed my shoulders. I'm trying to get this done. I've been trying to convince the director to let you be Alicia's stunt double. We can film with. I don't want to be in your film. I cut him off. After I was hesitant about training Alicia, there was no way I wanted to appear on screen. You didn't even consult me first. I can't do that. Wait, Stella. Just listen.
No, Luke.
You listen. I don't like parading myself around in a swimsuit in front of so many strangers, much less potentially millions of people who will see your film. I'm not a skinny Hollywood actress. I hugged the towel tighter. Please. Luke tried to look apologetic. If this is about your body issues, can we just put that aside for a minute? This is about the movie. I can't just put my body issues aside, Luke. Just like you can't put your hero complex aside. You can't save everything, I said, growing more irritated. He looked wounded and stunned by my comments. I don't try to do that. You know how much this film means to me. And I don't want to ruin it because you aren't confident in a swimsuit. Ouch. That hurt. I couldn't believe he belittled my feelings that way. I've tried to help you as best I can. Don't put the blame on me. I know why you want this to work, but you need to deal with your issues too. I said and stormed off the deck. I didn't know how to get through to him. It wasn't my fault. Alicia was the one they hired to do the movie. Blame her, I thought. I had been trying to get Luke to understand that we both had secrets and hang-ups we needed to deal with. The pressure of his star-studded world made me snap. And like all those other times when I couldn't deal with the tension, I ran away. That time Luke didn't. Chapter 39, Step It Up. In Luke's trailer, I changed back into my clothes, half wanting Luke to barge in at any minute. I even hesitated, taking extra time to put on my shoes and adjust my jeans.
No luck.
I called an Uber and walked the nearly mile distance, past the cityscape and suburban street corner that now annoyed me with their picture-perfect facades, to the movie lot's gate. When I heard a car rev up behind me, I quickly turned, hoping it was Luke's Ferrari. Instead, it was a Mini Cooper driven by a brunette 20-something. I worried I crossed the line with Luke, but he pushed me too far. I could only take so much humiliation. I don't think he realized how much people's comments hurt me. There was no way I wanted to be part of a film project with a director who called me a whale. And I particularly didn't want people to think I was trying to somehow weasel my way into being a star. I respected Alicia and her refined acting skills. It was just her swimming that was the problem. I texted Daniel and told him to meet me at the steps. I needed some fresh air, and he was the only one who could keep up. Daniel arrived to meet me at one of LA's hiking spots, noted for its view atop a hill of rock-hewn steps. Carrying his water bottle, he offered me his shoulder to cry on. I don't need to cry. I need to punch something, I said. He took a swift step back. Calm down, fighter. We looked up at the hill, which contained nearly 10 flights of steps to the top. Why don't we just do our thing and march right up there? He asked. I nodded. Daniel started ahead of me, taking each step pretty fast. We breezed up the first flight. Once the steps got a little steeper, I had to alternate leading with my left leg and then my right, pushing on my quad for each step. Daniel stepped at a pretty fast clip. It started to get harder and harder, my breath becoming heavy. But I enjoyed the challenge. At the midway point my pulse raced and I felt winded, but I was ready to keep going. I could see Daniel now a whole flight ahead of me. I followed the outline of his blue shoes with each step. I knew I could make it up to the top. Once I got there, the view would be worth it, my head would be clearer, and I could deal with the earlier horrors of the day. I saw Daniel disappear, a few other people now ahead of me in our ascent. He must have reached the top and walked away from the steps onto the lookout point, I thought. Just 2 more flights. I grinded my teeth in my gum. As I stepped again and again I could see small groups of people looking out over the hill. A whale couldn't do this, I thought. It only took about 15 minutes before I reached the top, tired and out of breath. I found Daniel, sipping from his water bottle. "You made it." He slapped my back as I hunched over slightly, trying to catch my breath. I turned around and looked out over the hill. We could see the Hollywood sign in the distance on a mountainside across the city. The sun, now setting, cast a pink and purple glow on the sky. I breathed in the cool evening air and blew out a hard breath. This was the LA I knew, people coming after work to step out their frustrations, enjoying the temperate weather, challenging themselves. It was real and gritty, unlike the pretty and fake veneer of a Hollywood movie set. That evening, looking at the Hollywood sign, I thought about Luke's LA with country clubs, a big mansion, fancy parties, red carpet events, and a Ferrari. I never dreamt I'd be a part of that Hollywood, and I still felt like I didn't belong there. "Let's take the back way down," Daniel said, indicating a trail on the other side of the pinnacle. "Then you can tell me what happened." I followed him down the winding dirt path on the other side of the hill. "Thanks for coming," I said to Daniel. "It's been a rough day." "I can tell," he said, looking me over. Luke's co-star was less than stellar, so Luke convinced the director to have me teach her something. But she wasn't the quickest study, if you know what I mean. Daniel nodded as we continued to hike down the path. "Anyway," I continued, "I got in the water tank to help. Then Luke wanted me to basically be a stunt double or something." "What?" Daniel looked excited. "That pays some real dough." I scoffed. I wasn't worried about the money. We didn't even get that far with Luke's plan before the director basically called me a whale. Daniel winced. "No way. I know I'm a lot bigger than his co-star, but come on. I just couldn't do it." "Stella," Daniel said, slowing down a little as he thought of what to say next. "Don't sell yourself short. This could be a big opportunity for you." Maybe he meant whale like those beautiful performing orcas at SeaWorld. I rolled my eyes. Whatever. It just seems like whatever I do, it's not enough for Luke. He keeps pushing me. I never wanted to go to the red carpet. I never wanted to end up in a tank on a movie set. Hell, I never even meant to train Luke in the first place. I pointed at Daniel. "It was meant to be you." "Stella, Stella, Stella." Daniel shook his head. "You act like this was all a bad thing. I know it's been difficult for you, but you can't just do what's comfortable all the time. You have to branch out. Strive for better." "I guess," I said begrudgingly. "But do you know how many times I've ended up in a pool with my clothes on or listening to comments about my larger than sample size frame since I've met Luke? And it's made you so strong. What happened with Ryan seems like eons ago. You've shown what you can really do. 2 years ago, you never would have made it up those steps. Now look at you. You've not only gotten fit and feisty, you're helping others reach their goals." I don't know how Daniel came up with those pep talks, but he certainly hit a chord in me. I walked beside him silently, popping my gum. He was right again. I needed to challenge myself. I wouldn't melt if a movie director called me a name. "I got pretty mad at Luke," I said. "So kiss and make up," Daniel shrugged. "I don't know if it'll be that easy." He was pretty pissed. He didn't even try to stop me this time. We continued to walk along the path, dirt dusting our shoes. "So he needs to cool off. Do you think he'll forgive me?" I looked at Daniel, hoping he'd say yes. I could see it on his face at his party. "He's into you. Now go grovel." "Wait, what about that girl from the other night? The brunette from Luke's crew?" I asked. "Not your usual type." "I know. We have a date set for tomorrow. I'm taking her to a play." I stopped mid-stride and looked at him surprised. "Look at you. A real date instead of just a hookup." He nodded smugly. "I guess we both can change," I said. After my talk with Daniel, I decided I should apologize to Luke for running away from our argument. I cringed at the thought of my juvenile behavior, and how I let one person's comment deflate my inner strength. Would Luke want to make up? Did he think our relationship was worth saving? I needed to show him how much he meant to me. It was time to take charge. Chapter 41, Movie Magic. Back on set later in the week, Claire the PA prepped Luke and I for the scene. Alicia agreed that I would do most of the underwater portions, and she would work on the above water shots from the platform in the pool. Instead of the dowdy bathing suit, I wore clothes identical to Alicia's. The makeup team had even affixed a blonde wig atop my head in order to appear more like Alicia. It was still abundantly clear I was a gravy boat compared to her teacup, but at least I resembled her a bit more. When we started in the water, I swam around with grace and ease, splashing where we needed to hide my face. Luke and I completed a couple takes and the director added some shots with Alicia. The director seemed pleased with the takes and gave us a break after an hour. "Luke," the director said hurriedly, "next we have to do the kiss. I want it to look as authentic as possible. I'm just not sure Alicia's going to be able to do it." "We'll give it a try," Luke said. I could see the strain on his face. Not only did he have to worry about swimming and Alicia trying not to flail, he had to perform an on-screen kiss in front of me and a dozen or so crew members. Needless to say, I wasn't looking forward to the next hour. The makeup artist touched up Luke and Alicia's faces, then they eased back in the tank. I sat out to the side, hoping my part would be done for the day. Once the director yelled action, Luke and Alicia tried to tread water close to each other. When Alicia tried to grab onto Luke, he fell beneath the surface. They tried it again. The next time, Alicia splashed Luke by accident and he coughed out some water. After several takes, they hadn't even gotten close to performing a kiss with their heads above water. On one final attempt, they puckered their lips and their faces met, but Alicia looked frantic instead of relieved to have been saved by her lover. The director rubbed his head, his complaints escalating after each take. "Put her back in," he said to his assistants, pointing toward me. "Let's see what we can get. Maybe we can cut something in," he said. The makeup artist quickly prodded at my skin, and I hopped in the tank, feeling nervous. Luke nodded at me, willing me to be confident. "You can do this," he whispered. "Just like last night," he whispered even more quietly, and I giggled. Action. We swam toward each other. I feigned hanging on to Luke, but actually propelled my body upright using a strong kick underwater. He brought me closer and I looked into his eyes. Our lips met and I felt Luke's familiar touch. Unlike the takes with Alicia, we didn't struggle and stayed with our lips locked until the director yelled, "Cut." I separated from Luke, who smiled at me. I treaded water, hanging my head, afraid to look at any of the crew. "Again," I heard the director say. We performed the scene 3 more times. Each time our lips met, I felt a fiery current pulse through my body. Not only was I kissing Luke, but I was also acting in a movie. It was a strange sensation to have my personal and professional lives collide. Luke, however, made me feel safe and confident, like I could easily have swum the English Channel. After embarrassing myself in front of Luke in the water so many times, I finally found satisfaction in being able to master the scene. "Great. I think we got something. Better chemistry there anyway," the director said. "Not bad for a whale, huh?" I replied. He gave me a snarky grin. Once we wrapped for the day, I saw Alicia scurrying back to her trailer. I knew how it felt to be humiliated, and I could only imagine how frustrated she must be. "Alicia," I said as I caught up to her, "I'm sorry. I don't mean to take your job." She turned her head to me, slowly eyeing me like a distrustful cat. "I'm not worried. Things will be much better when the water scenes are over." I nodded. "And then Luke will be all mine." I looked at her confused. "What do you mean?" I asked. "We're going to need to work on our connection," she said, raising her chin a little. "It will take some rehearsal." "I hope he's ready," she raised her eyebrow, showing her skepticism. I wasn't sure how to respond. Connection? Rehearsing? Of course. "He'll do whatever he needs to for the movie," I said. "We'll see if he's as committed to his acting as he is to fooling around in the pool." She looked down at me with disdain. "Whatever," I said. "You did realize swimming would be part of the movie, right?" I asked. "I'm sure my performance in the other scenes will more than make up for it." She turned slowly and glided away. Despite my conversation with Alicia, I was in a pretty good mood. When we got back to Luke's trailer, I checked my phone and saw that Michelle had texted me. "Yes," I said. Luke looked over. "What is it?" "Michelle aced the LSATs," I explained. "We have to do something to celebrate." "Dinner?"
No.
"Something better than that." I turned toward him, thinking about what to do that Michelle would love. "I have an idea," said Luke. As he told me, I clapped and giggled with joy. Michelle was going to
Chapter 42, Singeing Surprise.
Impressed that Luke remembered a key fact about Michelle, I hugged him. I couldn't believe he knew so many people. He told me one of his golf buddies was actually a musician and often played at clubs around the city. Luke texted him and set up an opportunity for Michelle that I knew she'd love. At home I congratulated Michelle on her awesome score, and we danced around. I told her to wear her new jeans and one of her chic tops because I was taking her out to celebrate. I changed into jeans and a magenta blouse. Along with some jewelry and stylish shoes, we looked ready to rock and roll. In a small club on Wilshire, we met Luke at the door. Inside, a packed crowd sat at small round wooden tables with others standing to the back by the bar. A bright light illuminated the stage, while the rest of the club looked dark and a little dingy. Pictures of famous musical artists hung on the walls, with wood paneling running the length of the walls below. Luke had reserved a table for us near the front, and we sat down and ordered our drinks. Michelle seemed chill but excited. I told her little about what was to transpire that evening, trying to keep her in suspense. Luke and I told her about our successful day filming a water scene with Luke, complete with a recap of our waterlogged smooch. A few moments later, Luke's musician friend took the stage. He played the guitar and sang with a backup band consisting of a woman on the drums and a male bass guitarist. While Michelle and I weren't familiar with all the songs, we enjoyed bobbing our heads and listening to the lyrics. Luke held my hand and I felt happy to be with him enjoying the evening. Before Luke's friend started his next song, he talked to the audience through the microphone. "I'd like to perform a special song next," he said, "but I'm going to need some help." He looked toward Luke and nodded. "I need Michelle to come up here." Michelle looked at me as I tried to push her out of her seat.
No.
"I'm not ready. What is this?" She slowly stood up at the table. "Go," I said. Luke's buddy waved her up on stage. Once she climbed the few steps, they walked back to the drum set and talked for a few moments. When they stepped back to the front of the stage, Michelle stood behind the microphone and Luke's buddy stood next to her with his guitar. The band started playing and after a few beats, Michelle started belting out a familiar song. Luke's buddy added his voice with Michelle's, and they performed a heartfelt duet. Michelle rocked it. When they were through, the crowd clapped. Michelle smiled wide and returned to our table. "Thank you," she said to Luke. "But I hate you." "Why?" "Me," he said to her in jest. Michelle punched me in the shoulder before sitting down. "I can't believe you did that. Next time don't surprise me." "What?" "You were great," I said, looking at her. "Come on. You had fun." She downed the rest of her drink in one gulp. "It was fabulous," she said. "It felt so good." "The audience really dug it," Luke added. "You better call my producer friend." Yeah, Michelle said. "No, seriously," Luke said before a pair of young girls in their 20s approached Luke. "Can we get a picture?" one asked him. I watched as Luke smiled, and the girl snapped a photo of the three of them with her phone. After the first two girls, a few minutes later, another small group asked for a photo. Again, Luke smiled and the girls crowded around Luke. "Your boyfriend is pretty popular." Michelle leaned over and whispered to me. "I know," I said between clenched teeth. When another girl came up to the table in a skimpy tank top, I knew it had to stop. "I just love you," she said. She stood in front of Luke and pulled up her shirt, revealing two breasts the size of grapefruits and no bra. Luke tried to look away and told her to put her shirt down, but the damage was done. She asked for an autograph on her chest, which thankfully Luke declined. "Sorry about that," he said. "We should probably get out of here. I have an early day tomorrow anyway." I could tell Luke was starting to get annoyed as the fans became more brazen. Usually once one or two people approach me, suddenly more and more come out of the woodwork. Once a lady even showed me a tattoo she got of my face on her chest. "What did you say to that?" I asked. "Thanks, ma'am, but I think my face would look better on a butt cheek." Luke laughed. "If only you had been beside me, I could have used a sassy comeback." I smiled and we stood up to leave. On the way out, a middle-aged lady tried to pet Luke like a dog, rubbing her hand down his arm as we walked out. It was the first time Luke and I had been in a very public place. The golf club was private and the movie set had security. The red carpet premiere was invite only, even though there were dozens of fans. It was bizarre seeing young girls and even grown women fawning all over him, and it felt weird to have to share the man I was interested in with crazy lust-filled ladies. Finally, when we were walking to the car, some teenagers noticed Luke and started to run over to him. Luke looked irritated, but unsure what to do. Being in my baddish cheeky mode, I thought quickly about what to do. I wanted to hide Luke, make him disappear like Houdini, but that probably wouldn't work, so I turned to him and started kissing him. I pushed him up against my crappy Honda and wouldn't let him come up for breath. When the excited teens reached us, they just stopped and stared. I continued to kiss Luke for another few seconds until I pulled away, turned to them and said, "What are you looking at?" They giggled like shy schoolgirls and ran off. Luke grinned. Thanks, Stella, he said. Get a room, Michelle said. We all laughed. We departed separately, Michelle and I in my car, Luke walking to the garage where he parked. As we passed him we waved frantically, imitating the crazed fans we met earlier, with Michelle poking her head out of the sunroof screaming, "I love you, Luke Mulligan." I laughed. Luke grinned and waved. Just be sure to keep your top on, I said to Michelle as she slunk back into her seat. That was fun. Thanks, she said. Your boyfriend seems like a really great guy. Not sure if he's my boyfriend, but yeah, he is great. Oh, he's your boyfriend, all right, she said. I just saw you suck his face off back there. I smirked. I wanted Michelle to be right. I looked forward to every minute I got to hang out with Luke, and I hoped he enjoyed my company just as much. But with so many girls throwing themselves at him, I couldn't help but wonder if he was just waiting until a better one came along. Chapter 43. Aloha Announcement. During the next several weeks, Luke and I hung out almost every night. While shooting his movie, Luke worked long hours on set. We continued to train in the mornings when we could to keep us both in shape, and at night relaxed together like a real couple. As she predicted, Alicia was a much better actress on land, and while her chemistry with Luke wasn't quite as electric as my own with him, they did manage to portray a convincing romantic couple. Besides training Luke, I still worked with old Mrs. Rosa despite the fact that she didn't care for her daughter-in-law. Once the daughter-in-law became pregnant, old Mrs. Rosa doted on her something fierce. She even bought the baby and the poodle a matching outfit. One morning during Luke's last week of filming, we hit the gym for a hardcore leg workout. Luke squatted with the barbell while I lunged holding some dumbbells. Now that this movie's over, are you still going to need a trainer? I asked Luke. Well, I'm still going to work out. You know, have to keep the ladies interested. He winked at me. I put down my dumbbells and swatted his shoulder. I guess I was just considering if I should try to get some other clients. I don't want to keep relying on you. Luke looked at me as if he was about to say something, then turned away to change out his weights on the bar. What is it? I asked. Nothing, he said. Luke, I know that look. You're hiding something. Stella, you did such a great job training me and getting me to swim. Of course I want you to help others and continue your career. It's just that. He turned away again, looking for another weight. Just what? I asked. I've been offered a new role. That's great, Luke. I smiled. Of course you're an in-demand actor. I'm sure you could get a ton of roles. I started lunging again with my weights. It's just that this one is in Hawaii. He turned to me looking a little concerned. Hawaii? Oh. It's a long shooting schedule too. Oh. So you're going to be there a while. I said between breaths, then put down my weights. Yeah. I'll probably rent a place. I'll keep this place too, of course. It's a really great role. Sure it is, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. I wasn't sure what Luke was trying to say. Was he breaking up with me in order to go film his new movie in Hawaii? Would he be willing to do long distance? Whatever he was thinking, I couldn't tell. Stella, he walked over to me. I don't expect you to drop everything for me, but I was thinking. Great, here it is, I thought. He's going to tell me we're going different directions or something like that. Will you go to Hawaii with me? He asked. What? I asked, not sure I heard him correctly. I mean, if you want to. I think it could be great. I'm sure it's. Hold on. You want me to come to Hawaii with you? I know you don't want to leave Daniel and Michelle. You can fly back anytime. I was thinking I could. Aloha, I yelled. Absolutely. I jumped into his arms. So that's a yes? Of course, I said. I thought you were going to break up with me.
Estella, no.
I'm so into you. He hugged me tighter. I've loved getting to know you. These past few weeks have been great. I was just afraid you wouldn't want to go. Maybe I could get some training clients there. And Michelle is going to flip. I've never been to Hawaii. Luke smiled, looking more relieved. I also thought maybe I could ask the director about hiring you to do some work on the film. I looked at him skeptically. Just hear me out, he continued. You did so well on the last film. And this one is going to have a ton more actors in the water. I heard they need people who can boogie board. You know what? I grabbed his hand. I'm up for whatever, as long as I'm with you. He kissed me. I hugged him, feeling elated about the prospect of going to Hawaii. The hard part was going to be telling Michelle and Daniel. I waited for a few days, not bringing up my newfound plan with Michelle or Daniel. But after Michelle finally called that music producer, and he wanted to meet her, I thought she just might be in a good mood afterward. Because I knew if I told her first, Daniel might get mad. We are blood related after all. And if I told him first, Michelle might get pissed. I decided to tell them together. So I invited him and his girlfriend Polly over for some dessert. That time I made one of Daniel's favorites since childhood, a chocolate chip cookie cake, along with vanilla ice cream. I hoped it would ease the blow of my announcement. Daniel and Polly arrived before Michelle got home. He'd been dating her for several weeks by that point, a record for him. As I let them in, Polly took a deep breath, inhaling the smell wafting from the oven. "It smells so homey and yummy," she said. "Thanks. It's a pretty easy recipe." "Can I have it?" she asked. "I know Daniel likes it." "Sure. It's no secret," I said. "Basically the recipe on the bag of chocolate chips." She nodded. "Thanks." I liked that she thought about Daniel, a departure from the women he usually dated. They sat on the couch and held hands, his one arm still a little less defined after having the cast removed. When Michelle came in a few minutes later, I wasn't sure if her meeting had gone well or not. She looked kind of concerned but also oddly in thought. "So?" I asked her. "So?" she said. "There was good and there was bad." "Well, good thing is I'm making chocolate chip cookie cake." "With vanilla ice cream?" "You bet." I took the cake out of the oven, cut it, and plopped creamy balls of vanilla ice cream on top. I like to serve the cake hot so it will be gooey and the ice cream melts into the cake below, adding to the flavor. The four of us sat at the table to eat. "Tell us, Michelle," I said. "I met him at the studio. It was all pretty professional. Then he asked me to sing. I sang that song, you know, the one from karaoke where everyone went wild." I nodded my head. "It went pretty well." He said I had great range and depth. Then he asked me to do some backup vocals for a song he's recording for Luke's movie. "Really?" I said, surprised. "Yeah, but here's the bad part," she continued. I got so excited. I jumped on him to hug him and practically knocked him to the floor. We all laughed. "But he's okay, right?" I asked. "Oh yeah, sure. He wants me to come in next week to record," she said before shoving a spoonful of ice cream in her mouth. "That's amazing," I said. "I know." She gleamed. "I just embarrassed myself at the end." I've embarrassed myself a ton of times in front of Luke, and he wants to take me to Hawaii." "What?" Michelle and Daniel both said and turned toward me. "Yeah, his next role is in Hawaii. And he wants me to go with him." I clenched my teeth and made a funny smile. Daniel nodded his head and pushed his plate away. "So that's what this is all about. You're a recording artist now and you're going to Hawaii." He nodded first to Michelle and then me. "Just some backup vocals. No big deal. I'm still going to go to law school. But this could be fun," Michelle said. "And I'm not leaving you forever. Just a little while. Luke might be able to get me some work on the film. They need strong swimmers." Polly looked at Daniel, who stared at his plate. "I'll be here," she said in a little voice. Daniel smiled at her and squeezed her hand. He took a big bite of cake and ice cream. "Be sure to get that recipe and everything will be fine." We talked and laughed like old times. I think Polly even caught on to our sense of humor. In the end, Daniel and Michelle didn't take the news of my leaving so bad. As it turns out, we are all moving on in our own way. While there were a lot of details to work out before I left, I was glad I had an evening with my two best pals. I knew my next few weeks would be filled with new challenges and hurdles, and knowing they supported me meant the world to me. Could I handle moving away from them? Who would I turn to if I had troubles with Luke? Those questions swirled around in my head as I contemplated going to Hawaii. I definitely wanted to be with Luke and make it work, but how could I be sure it was the right decision? I took a bite of my cake and ice cream and decided I'd come that far with Luke. I'd cross an ocean for him too. Chapter 44. Heart Event. As Luke's film wrapped, he decided to hold an event to support his new charity, helping kids learn how to swim. Along with Katie's help and other organizers, they planned a pool party at Luke's country club, which included several coaches providing lessons for the kids. Like almost every other LA day, the sun rained down on the pool, making the water gleam. Together with the plush green lawn and gleaming white deck chairs, the country club appeared distinguished. The event also included food, cake, lawn games and loads of balloons strung up to tents set up with sign-up stations for lessons at local pools. Luke's team contacted several community pools in and around LA to help set up his program. The kids and chaperones attending the pool party were bussed in from various LA neighborhoods. When the bus arrived, kids streamed out with bubbling commotion, excited for the fun and opportunity ahead. Some pointed at the pool in awe, while others ran around the lawn chasing each other. Their bodies gave life to the otherwise stodgy surroundings. Each kid was assigned a swim buddy for the day. I agreed to help out by being a swim buddy for a shy and smiley 6-year-old boy named Jake. When I met Jake, I could tell Jake felt nervous. He nodded and smiled, But unlike some of the other kids who ran around on the lawn, kicking balls or chasing errant balloons, Jake stayed by my side. I offered to get him a drink and he nodded yes. He didn't say much and I didn't want to pry. We eventually got in the pool, and Jake immediately hung onto my arm. Tight. He wouldn't let go, eyeing the water like it was an infectious disease. I pulled him around in the shallow end where he could stand. Even then he held on tightly to my arm. I grabbed his hands and we played Ring Around the Rosie, where he wouldn't even dip his body in past his shoulders. Luke's buddy was quite the opposite of my own. He couldn't swim that well but could doggy paddle. He tried to wrestle Luke in the water, and I could see them in the deeper water having fun roughhousing. When it was time for cake and pictures, of course there had to be some media coverage in order for the charity to get some publicity. Jake smiled broadly, still holding my arm even out of the water. When the kids left, I felt sad to see Jake go. Katie congratulated Luke on a successful event and even seemed more relaxed, sipping a lemonade after all the kids had gone. Since seeing me at Luke's party, she seemed to trust me more. Luke and I sat on the pool's edge, still in our bathing suits, our feet dangling in the water as some of the country club staff cleaned up. "You were really patient with that kid today," Luke said to me. "Thanks. He was so sweet, just shy, and very afraid of the water." "I know. Kind of reminds me of myself," he said. "And what about your kid?" I gave Luke a little shoulder bump. "Were you two practicing to be pro wrestlers?" I asked. "He was a lot of fun." "Wow, he had a lot of energy." I nodded, thinking about what it would be like to have kids with Luke, and then quickly reminding myself it was way too soon to have thoughts like that. "You'll make a good dad someday," I said, becoming brave to actually broach the subject. Luke and I had never even talked about kids. "Thanks," he said. "I think I would be good with boys. Not so sure about girls, though." His face darkened. "I'm just afraid a little girl would remind me of my sister." I wasn't quite sure how to respond to that. I knew the event would drum up memories for Luke. "I think she would be so proud of what you're doing." Luke kicked a little water my way. "You want kids?" he asked. I shrugged my shoulders. "I think I will someday," I said. "Once I find the right person." Luke splashed me, the water hitting my face, causing me to blink. I splashed him back, and then he grabbed my shoulders and pulled me into the water with him. "Well, I hope you found him." Luke kissed me, standing in the pool. "That day I saw you here." He pointed toward the deep end where I fell in. "I knew you were someone special. I couldn't take my eyes off you." I hugged him. Then he kicked my legs out from under me and dunked me under the water. "Hey, that was a cheap shot," I said, accusing him. "Sorry," he said. "I can't have everyone thinking I'm a total softie." He indicated the people by the pool and lawn cleaning up the remnants of the day. As we were swimming around, I kept hearing my phone buzzing from my jacket pocket. At first, I didn't pay attention to it, preferring to focus on Luke. After the fourth or fifth time, I exited the pool, wrapped a towel around myself and checked my phone. It was my mom, and she needed my help. I rushed to the hospital to find my mom in a hospital bed, telling the nurse an off-color joke as she adjusted one of the monitors beside my mom's bed. That was my mom, always ready with a laugh, almost never preferring to talk about serious things. "Mom, what's wrong?" I asked. "I got your messages." "Oh, you're finally here." I walked over to her sitting upright in the hospital bed, a hospital-issued nightgown covering her chest. I kissed her cheek. She looked fine, actually in really good spirits. Her dark brown hair grazed her shoulders, and her face appeared rosy with her usual amount of makeup. "It was just a heart thing. They're doing tests. No biggie." She waved the air in front of her, indicating it was no big deal. "Heart? What heart thing? That doesn't sound like no big deal." "It wasn't a heart attack. A heart event, they call it," she said, adjusting her blanket. "Sounds like a heart attack. I told you can't eat those cakes at night. And I need to get you walking." I ran my hands through my hair. "I should have been coming over more. Get you more exercise." I started to pace around the room, thinking about how to fix the problem. "Stella, I am not an invalid. You live your life. I'm busy anyway. Speaking of that, you should quit your job. I'll help you." I stopped and stood beside her bed. "Stella, listen to me." She grabbed my hand. "I'm not your father. I love you. You're a good daughter. You visit me when you can. But I'm not going to rely on you. I'm fine. Should be out of here in a day, 2 tops. Sure, but when you get home." "Stella," I said, "I'm fine." She took a more clipped tone, telling me I should drop it. "Now tell me, how's that hunky movie star boyfriend of yours?" I had told her the previous week about our plans to move to Hawaii for a while. She had been really excited, encouraging me to get out and see the world. He's good. We were just at an even for his swim charity, I said. She nodded. And the move, when are you going? We had planned to leave the following week, but seeing my mother in the hospital bed with what she called an event, I couldn't leave her. I don't know, I said, but I wouldn't look at her. Stella, I know that look. You are not scrapping your plans for me. You are going to Hawaii, she said. You heard the one about the guy who got stranded on a desert island? And with that, I knew the serious part of our conversation was over. If I didn't have a plan in place, I knew I wouldn't be able to leave and enjoy my time with Luke. I thought about postponing and letting Luke go ahead. While I didn't want him to leave without me, I could meet him in Hawaii in a few weeks. I knew Luke would understand, but would my mom? Before I could take off for Hawaii, I needed to make sure my mom would be okay. Chapter 45. Farewell Face Masks. I texted Daniel from the hospital and made plans to visit him at his apartment the next day, one place I generally avoided. When I arrived, to my surprise, his apartment looked a little homey, a little less like the stark bachelor pad I knew. Daniel had always kept it pretty clean, but now there were actually a few pictures in frames sitting on a side table, and he had pillows on the couch, adding a nice decorative touch. I'd never seen his apartment so spruced up. What's with the pillows? I asked as I came in and sat down on the couch. Polly, Daniel said, plopping down next to me and putting one of the pillows in his lap. I nodded. She's good for you. He nodded too. What's up? Like I told you last night, old Mrs. Rosa hurt her hip. I can't leave her, Daniel. Stella, don't worry. I can handle it. You. I looked at him doubtful. I love you and you're a badass trainer, but you can't take care of an old woman. He looked at me skeptically. What did the doctor say? What's the problem with her hip? I cocked my head thinking about how to respond. Well, he said he thinks it's just bruised. It's just that old Mrs. Rosa doesn't trust anyone else. She needs to take it slow even if it is just a bruise. Easy, Daniel said. Old ladies love me. Go. Stella, I got this. He put his hands to his chest. She'll be fine. I wanted so much to believe him. I can call her daughter-in-law to help too. They've suddenly been a little chummy. See? There you go. He sat with his palms up. I know, but she relies on me. I should be the one to help her. Daniel put his hand on my shoulder. She'll be fine. Go to Hawaii with Luke. You can't save everyone. At Daniel's words, I remembered my fight with Luke and how I blamed him for the same thing. I'd tell old Mrs. Rosa the truth and convince her to trust Daniel. And who could tell? Maybe the extra time with her daughter-in-law would bring them even closer. I hugged him. How can I ever repay you? You've been so good to me lately. What about you? He winked at me. It's not been so bad for me. I found Polly and, he paused. What? What aren't you telling me? I glared at him. Luke wants me to house sit. I laughed. Leave it up to Luke to take care of Daniel too. I pointed at Daniel, warning him. You better not have any big parties. He laughed a sly laugh. I smiled too. Just don't trash the house. I won't. Promise. After I left Daniel's apartment, I thought about how much Luke had changed my life. Not only was I moving to Hawaii with him, but he continued to help out the people I care about, Michelle and Daniel. The next few days were frantic, preparing to move to another state. At the hospital, I brought Daniel to go over some exercises for old Mrs. Rosa in consultation with her doctor. When I told her the truth about my Hawaii plan, she reached out to hug me. I told you getting naked would bring good things. She winked at me. I blushed. I asked her about her daughter-in-law coming to help more until her hip fully healed. Old Mrs. Rosa admitted that her Oscar already planned to send over his wife with dinner every night, and had hired a cleaning lady to come once a week. I was surprised the busy accountant finally stepped up, and it relieved some of my stress about the situation. They even planned to introduce old Mrs. Rosa's cats and the poodle. Later that evening, Lyle came over to my apartment at Luke's request to help me pack and make wardrobe selections. No. He threw a blouse out of my closet. No. He threw another one. No, and another. Take, he said, throwing a denim button down my way. Once Lyle was through, my suitcase only included a few items. I need more than that, I said. You're in luck, darling, he said. He wheeled in a suitcase full of summer dresses, skirts and tops that were just my size, along with cardigans and jackets for any cool nights. Wow, I said. Thank you. No problem. These were just lying around with some designers I know. I did have to order you these things specially though. He brandished a large gym bag packed with new workout clothes. I smiled. You know me so well, I said. Just promise me you won't wear these all day. Change into some real clothes once in a while. He asked. I promise. And one more thing, he went into the living room and came back with a garment bag. As he unzipped it, I gasped. He revealed another sea-inspired dress in green and blue that shimmered with every movement. Lyle, I said. It's gorgeous. I know, darling. He smiled. Somehow you've given me some inspiration. Just promise when you wear it to some big event, you drop my name. He smiled and tilted his head. Absolutely. With dresses like this, you'll be a top designer in no time. I said. I'm designing a dress for a music awards show presenter for next month. Apparently your friend Michelle dropped my name at some recording she did. I beamed. That's great. I'm sure you'll make whoever it is look stunning. If you can glamorize this ostrich, you can dress anyone. That's why I'm doing all this, darling. You didn't deserve those comments. I'm sorry. He looked at me, waiting for an answer. I forgive you. At the door on the way out, Lyle turned and hugged me. I thought you didn't like germs? I said. Oh well. I've grown quite fond of you, darling. He leaned in closer. Just don't be caught dead in those shoes, okay? He looked down at my black Nikes. I nodded, sad to see Lyle leave. Despite our disputes, we had come to an understanding, even a friendship. I knew I'd miss seeing him around. For my last night in the apartment with Michelle for a few months, I suggested we do a girls' night with snacks, a movie, and some at-home spa treatments. We sat on the couch watching one of our favorite dramas, our faces covered in green goo, dipping spoons into our own personal pints of Ben & Jerry's. I'm really going to miss this, Michelle said. Yeah, well, now you'll have law school applications and then law school and oh yeah, a recording contract on the side.
He smiled here.
She dipped her spoon into the pint of ice cream and licked it with satisfaction. It was pretty cool getting to record some backup tracks. When can I hear it? When the movie's done, she said. The producer said he would keep me in mind if anything else came up. She took another bite of ice cream. I love this part. I waved my spoon at the TV screen. We watched in silence for a minute before Michelle spoke again. Seeing you and Luke together. I'm just so happy for you, Stella. Her eyes started to well up. Very uncharacteristic for Michelle. Don't cry. Don't cry, I said, waving at her face. You'll ruin the mask. I've been so busy preparing for the LSATs, I haven't really had time to date. I feel like I've lived vicariously through you. I need to thank you for helping me with Luke. She hugged me. I didn't do anything but help you be yourself. It's been all you, Stella. Don't you forget that. She pulled away to look at me, staring at each other with the green goo on our faces, trying to have a serious conversation. We laughed. What's your arrangement with Luke anyway? I'm not sure, I said. I mean, he rented one house for both of us, but if you're asking if we're exclusive and moving in together, we haven't actually talked about it. Just be careful, she said. Be honest. You won't have me there to push you to ask the hard questions. She looked at me knowingly. We can always FaceTime, I said. And don't worry, Luke already promised me a ticket to Hawaii. I'm coming to visit. She threw up her arms in excitement. I embraced her, not caring if I messed up our masks. I can't wait. Michelle's question got me thinking about the situation with Luke. I wasn't sure how to broach the subject with him. He'd been so generous helping my friends securing a place to live. I didn't want to seem too clingy or needy. I just figured once we were there we could work things out. It made me feel better that Michelle planned to visit. After all, Hawaii was only a plane ride away. Michelle and I sat back and finished watching the movie Two Old Friends, looking forward to new adventures. Chapter 46. Airport Evasion. Once our moving day arrived, I was both excited and nervous like I had been for our red carpet appearance. While it wasn't our first date, it was the first time Luke and I would be traveling together. It was hard to leave my friends and family, but with Luke by my side, I felt like it was the right choice. I wanted to be with him, and traveling to a picturesque place away from everything I'd known was a price I was willing to pay. The driver Luke hired dropped us off at LAX, and we entered the airport with minimal luggage. Luke and I shipped a few things ahead, and Luke promised to buy anything else we needed when we got there. He wore a hat and sunglasses, but still not used to being famous, I hadn't worn anything to disguise myself. When I came out of the restroom before meeting up with Luke to walk through security, I heard someone say, "There's that tart dating Luke Mulligan." I spun around to see a cameraman and a lackey running after me, trying to take my picture. By this point, I'd been called a ton of names due to my association with Luke. Tart was a new one, and the general lack of decorum made me fume. While having our picture or video taken wasn't all that bad, I didn't want them to win. Not after that comment. After all, I was no Tart. I could see Luke across the airport's lobby, and paused to consider whether I should run in the opposite direction. I pivoted to turn around, but I was too late. There he is, someone said, pointing toward Luke. We were caught. I knew Luke didn't want to make a scene. How could I get these people off our tails? I ran to Luke and grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the escalator leading down to arrivals. We wouldn't make it past security in time to get to the gate before the paparazzi could catch up. And although I only saw 2, there could easily be more lurking around. Like a pair of antelope, we ran away from the 2 hungry lions hunting us. We zigzagged past other travelers on the escalator, arriving at baggage claim as luggage started crashing down on the conveyor belt. Luke ran to one side of the big oval where people crowded around looking for their bags. He managed to crouch behind some large suitcases amongst a group of travelers. I stepped the opposite way and tried to blend in with the crowd. Next to me stood a tall, broad woman with dark big hair teased into a sizable poof, dressed in a retro plaid dress, accentuating a small waist and ample bosom. Her bright red lips against her pale skin stood out along with a pair of 6-inch pink platform heels. While I tried to hide behind her, she noticed the cameraman and started to wave, believing the paparazzi was there for her. If I ran, they'd surely see me. Instead, I prayed she was someone famous too, and they'd change the focus of their attention onto the clearly flamboyant diva. They kept scanning the room, searching while the lady called, "You over here?" Clearly annoyed they weren't interested in her. Bag after bag flew down the chute onto the carousel as the crowd watched for their luggage. As one bag careened onto the belt, its old-style clip snapped open and the suitcase lid flung wide, spilling some of its contents. Vibrant scarves and what looked like silky lingerie floated amongst the other bags. The open suitcase circled toward me, colorful garments piled high inside. "Oh dear," said the woman, and I knew it was her bag, half its contents strewn across the carousel. She looked troubled, but still smiled toward the cameraman. I considered once she stepped to grab the bag I'd be made. But before that could happen, the cameraman noticed me. As he dashed over, I contemplated my options. With a crowd packed around the carousel waiting for bags, maneuvering would be difficult. I needed something to slow him down. As he ran nearer, I picked up a handful of clothes from the open suitcase still on the belt, threw them at the camera, and took off where I met up with Luke on the other side. I looked back to see the woman, now upset that the cameraman was trying to push her out of the way. He paused to pluck off a lacy pair of red panties stuck on the camera lens. As he held the underwear between his thumb and forefinger, the retro diva snatched them away. I felt sorry for her with her clothes strewn about, but I think she understood my predicament as she nodded my way and stomped on the cameraman's toe with her 6-inch pink heel, causing him to hop on one foot in pain. His partner stood and stared, more concerned with making sure his colleague was okay. It was enough time for Luke and I to get away and far enough in the security line that the paparazzi wouldn't bother us. "That was some quick thinking there, Stella," Luke said once we safely sat in our seats on the plane. "Thanks," I said. "Luckily we got a little help from a friend." I rested my head on Luke's shoulder. Flying to a beautiful island with him, I couldn't help but be elated. I felt so close to Luke, like we were 2 love-struck heroes fleeing the bad guys. Looking forward to our future in Hawaii, I reflected on how well we worked together and looked out for each other. With Luke by my side, I had accomplished so much. Luke squeezed my hand, and I felt our familiar connection. Looking out the window, watching the plane soar through the clouds, I smiled and squeezed Luke's hand back. "I love you," I said. Luke sat there frozen. Why did I say that? I thought. I didn't mean to say that so soon. I wished I could take it back. I wondered what to do. After Luke's stoic reaction, I sat there too, not able to move. Should I take my hand back? Apologize? Say I didn't mean it? I think I did mean it though. It's so hard to know sometimes, or at least know when to say it. I didn't plan it, that's for sure. It just came out because I had such positive feelings, because I was literally floating on air. Surely he'd understand. "Luke," I said, trying not to move. "You don't have to say anything. Well, it's better than blurting it out during sex, isn't it?" He gave me a funny look. I continued. "Okay, I'm making it worse. I don't expect you to say it back. I'm just so happy is all. That's it. I say stupid things when I'm happy." I suddenly felt an intense pressure in my head and opened my mouth to pop my ears. I must have looked so silly when Luke turned toward me. "It's not stupid. It's that. No. I waved my hand back and forth, trying to get him to stop. "Forget I said anything. Please." I looked at him, pleading with my eyes. "You know I don't expect anything from you. Pretend this didn't happen." He nodded, looking a little unsure. "How about your Sudoku? Is it empty?" I asked, pulling out the in-flight magazine. Michelle told me to check, claiming the seat was lucky if the pocket magazine included an empty Sudoku. I looked in the magazine and my Sudoku had already been filled in. Figures. Unlucky. When Luke opened his, it was empty. I pulled out a pen from my bag, and we started filing in the numbers together. I was glad for the distraction, something to occupy my mind after my gaffe. I kept replaying my words in my head, angry with myself and my stupidity. The last thing I wanted was to make Luke uncomfortable around me, or try to move things along too fast. I knew Luke cared about me. That was enough for now. I didn't want to ruin a Chapter 47 love nest. By the time we landed, I had taken a short nap and felt a little better. Luke helped me retrieve my bag from the overhead compartment, and we exited the plane. A car was waiting for us after we grabbed our other bags, and we climbed in. The air outside felt warm and tropical, a tad different than LA. The sun had started to set, but I could see lush green landscape as we drove along the highway. After about an hour, we pulled onto a dirt driveway, lined with palm trees. As the car passed some bushes with thick green leaves, I could see the outline of a house starting to form. I made out a large modern-style glass and concrete structure with several balconies in the darkened distance. "Luke, it's beautiful," I said in awe. "I thought you'd like it," he said. We pulled in front of the garage, which housed some surfboards and other beach equipment. It looked well organized and clean. I was sure the rest of the house would be the same. "I'll help you with your bags," the driver said. It was funny watching a man much smaller lug Luke's bags through the door that led to the house, but he seemed eager to make a good impression. Luke tipped him and the driver nodded, retreating to his car. "Let's look around," Luke said, eager to take in the new pad. I scampered around from one room to the next, flicking on lights. The open layout and glass walls made the house look airy and modern. The kitchen was large, maybe not as large as Luke's LA home, but still included an ample center island and plenty of counter space. I ran ahead of Luke to the stairs and up to the bedrooms that were positioned off of a center landing. From the top of the stairs, a window revealed a breathtaking view of the ocean, rippling in the moonlight. I turned right and ran into a large bedroom, furnished with a 4-poster bed and wooden bureau and dresser. It also included a view of the water from a large balcony outside a pair of glass doors. Another doorway led to an ensuite bathroom with a steam shower. I checked out the other bedrooms, which were not quite as big but equally as lovely. I couldn't believe the natural beauty that seemed to infiltrate the house with every step I took. It was amazing. I felt so lucky to be able to live in such a stunning place, even if it was only temporary. "Do you like it?" Luke asked. I turned to him, standing on the landing, looking out at the lapping waves. "Nah," I said, shaking my head. "Really?" He laughed, knowing I was joking. "I love it." I wrapped my arms around him and kissed him. "I'm surprised because you're not much of a beach person. The ocean view is impressive." "Yeah, well, someone taught me not to be afraid of the waves. I actually kind of like looking at it now. It reminds me of this girl I know." "Oh yeah? Who?" I teased. He caressed the hair off my forehead and kissed me fervently on the lips. "So which room do you want?" he asked. In all our preparations, booking flights, packing our stuff, temporarily changing my address, Luke and I never really discussed our living arrangement. Because he asked me to go to Hawaii with him, I assumed it meant it was like he was asking me to move in with him. And when men do that, don't they usually mean they want to share a bed with you? So Luke's question threw me for a moment. "Well, they're all nice," I said, playing along. "But I guess I'll take the big one." "Okay, boss," he said, using the familiar moniker he used with me in the beginning of our relationship. He went downstairs and brought up our bags, placing mine in the big bedroom and his in one of the smaller rooms. I remember wondering in that moment if he was serious about moving into that room. I wanted Luke in bed with me. I envisioned waking up and watching the ocean, snuggling against Luke's broad chest, then rolling over to ride him up and down like the waves lapping along the shore. When he came back into the big bedroom, I said, "Thanks," and I stripped off my shirt and pants and reclined on the bed as Luke watched me. He hesitated and turned to leave. "Wait," I said. "Aren't you going to tuck me in? I could use a good night kiss." Luke turned and smiled. He strode back to the bed and bent over me to give me a kiss. I hugged him tight and pulled him on top of me. I ran my hands down his legs and the front of his pants. Then I undid his button and zipper, pulling down his jeans and underwear, kissing him all over. For a moment he sat up and removed his shirt. With his body on top of mine, we kissed, and I wrapped my legs around his back, keeping his body firmly against my own. He slid my underwear down, kissing the inside of my leg. It tickled a little and I shuddered. I unsnapped my bra, exposing my breasts. Luke sucked the left one and then the right, reaching between my legs. He continued to caress my breasts as he turned me over on my side so I was facing the ocean. Then he entered me from a sideways position, my legs like scissors around his hardened member. We moved together watching the waves. With Luke inside me, we undulated back and forth. He fondled my breasts and kissed my shoulder, the tension building. He started moving faster. I moaned, enjoying his hardness inside me. He held my shoulder tighter until we climaxed, relaxing into each other. I continued to lie on my side, watching the water, careful not to say anything to ruin the moment. In the silence, our bodies spoke of our connection, fitting together like two puzzle pieces. With Luke, I felt both the physical and emotional bond one desired. The next morning, the bright sun blazed through the windows. I rolled over to find Luke still next to me. "Morning," I said. "I see you didn't make it to your room last night." "Yeah, not exactly. You know, if you're going to stay over like this, I think I can spare a drawer." I pointed to the dresser. Luke leaned on his elbow, squinting a bit in the sunlit room, getting used to the morning light. "I just didn't want to make you uncomfortable," he said, tracing my neckline with his finger. "I didn't want you to think that coming with me to Hawaii came with a price. I don't expect, well, you know. I know we didn't really talk about it, but I guess I assumed moving to Hawaii with you meant moving in together." "Definitely. I want you to live here." He nodded. "Just not in the same room?" I asked, not sure what he meant. "I didn't want to pressure you. I want to make sure you have your own space if you want it. But of course I want you close." He pulled me to him under the sheets. "Goo. You can keep your stuff in the other room, but I want you right here with me." I leaned over him and kissed him on the lips. "This bed is too big for one person anyway." I hopped out, naked but having to pee, and scurried to the bathroom. "By the way," I said, "this bathroom is the bomb." Luke and I spent the rest of the day exploring our sprawling love nest. I made sure to check on my mom, whom Daniel assured me was doing well, and I sent pictures of our new pad to Michelle, who freaked at the size and gorgeous view. Luke and I walked down to the beach, hand in hand, strolling along the sand, water licking our feet. Afterward, we relaxed by the infinity pool that sat on a grassy hill above a series of steps that led to the beach. Luke and I swam and snacked by the poolside. "There's something I didn't get a chance to show you last night," Luke said after we got dressed. He grabbed my hand and led me toward a small structure that looked like a little pool house. Inside was a quaint gym with a few weights, a boxing bag, and a few other of my favorite workout items. "So this is where I'm going to kick your butt," I said, nodding my approval. "Sure is. The house is so open there wasn't really a space for it." "This is great," I said. "We can heat up then cool down in the pool." That night, Luke didn't hesitate, coming into bed with me after we watched a movie. I snuggled into his chest, my head close enough to hear his heart beat. Just the two of us, blissfully happy and alone. But that was about to change. We couldn't stay in our secluded enclave forever. We were going to have to face the world sometime. And somehow I just knew it would test our relationship